In this episode of the Project Management Podcast, I'm being interviewed by Oliver Lehmann and Martin Berneberg of the Project Business Foundation. We'll talk about my career, leadership, and lots of project business management. Hello and welcome back to the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com. This is episode 453 and I'm Cornelius Fichtner. Thank you very much for joining us. Nice to see you again. So in this episode of the Project Management Podcast, it's all about this guy here. I was recently interviewed by Martin Berneberg and Oliver Lehmann of the Project Business Foundation. It was a 90-minute interview. They had so many questions. And as you know, I can talk quite a bit. So, without further ado, let's step right into part one of the interview. Part two will be coming your way shortly.
Hello and welcome everyone to the newest installment of the Project Business Foundation interview series. My name is Martin Berneberg. I'm the CEO of the foundation and I'm here today with Oliver Lehmann, the president of our organization. Hello, Oliver. Good to have you here.
Hi. Martin.
Oliver and I are fortunate to be joined from the US by Cornelius Fichtner, president of OSP International, today widely known, and I mean world widely known, for its online offerings supporting project management, exam preparation, and PDU training. Hello, Cornelius. It's such a
good morning or good
here.
Afternoon, rather. Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. And just before we get started, I wanted to let everyone know we expect a lively conversation as always when Oliver and Cornelius get together. But everyone out there, please do feel free to submit your questions to the chat. And should we have enough time, we will try to go through those questions towards the end of the session. But now let's jump right in. Cornelius, leagues of project managers know you for your trailblazing business, helping aspiring certification holders prepare for some of the most rigorous professional exams. But beyond having helped more than 50,000 exam takers prepare, your own background offers quite some colorful experiences both in project management and project business management. Can you please tell us a little bit about your own roots in the field?
Yes, I can. I think that's what I came here for today. So thank you very much. I did write up for you guys a little bit of a history of where I was and what I did and all the jobs that I had in preparation of this conversation. And then this morning, when I woke up, I suddenly realized Oxford. I have to mention Oxford. We have to start with Oxford because without Oxford, I wouldn't really be where I am now. There's another event that comes later on in my life that also made quite a big change in how things progressed. And Oxford is where I went to school when I was 16 and a half, 17-ish. And I always have to clarify, no, I did not go to the University of Oxford. I went to St. Clair's Hall. St. Clair's Hall is a privately held college in Oxford. They're just a little bit outside of Oxford. And I went there to study English as a foreign language. So I went there with a fairly good command of the English language. And I came out of that school after 6 months with a really my English was close to native level at that point. It really propelled me. Something just clicked and opened up in my brain, and my English went from, I have a good command, to people in England had a hard time telling me apart from foreigners. They couldn't tell whether I was native or Swiss. And I think without those 6 months, laying the foundation of being able to do business worldwide, without that, I don't think I would be where I am right now. Went back to Switzerland after that and I did a commercial apprenticeship. Something that's very unknown here in the United States. Everybody seems to want to go to university and learn, on a theoretical level at the university and get their masters or just a degree. Whereas in Europe, and I think Germany as well, we do have a very traditional apprenticeship system where you work for a company for a certain time. You're a junior, there are masters there, and by masters I literally mean they have a master in that particular field, and they will teach you the tricks of the trade. And I went to and worked at the local newspaper. The Solothurner Zeitung still exists today. And I was there for 3 years, and I did a commercial apprenticeship. So I was, in the purchasing department for 6 months. And then I went over into the logistics department, and then I went to bookkeeping for 6 months. And so they rotated you around the company for 6 months periods over the course of 3 years. So you would get to see 6 departments. And at the same time, you also go to school. And so that's where I learned business from the ground up. 1.5 days per week, you go to school. Oh, and that's where I learned typing, believe it or not. For 1 year in the first year out of those 3, there was typing was part of this. And my colleagues, they are always amazed when we are on chat. And I type at the same time as we talk. I can type as fast as I can, almost as fast as I can speak. So that was there. Yes. After that, I was unemployed for 1.5 days. That was a low point in my life. No, just kidding. And I started as a software developer in the paper mill of Biberist. That company later on went out of business. And that might actually be an interesting topic to talk about as well. Let's see where we get to. Oh, I think we just lost Oliver there. So yes, I went to the paper mill of Biberist, and I got a job there as a junior software developer. And for the next 3.5 years, I worked for them, doing all kinds of software development. Everything was on a mainframe. It was COBOL, a common business-oriented language that was, en vogue back then. And that's also where I did my first, dare I call it a project? I'm not quite sure. It was something along the lines of Project Dish. It started out with my boss coming to me and saying, why don't you go over into the product department? There is, I've forgotten his name. Let's call him Mr. Smith. There is Mr. Smith. He wants something. So I went over there, I spoke to him, and 14 months later, I was done. He wanted a software package that could calculate the cost for the development of every single piece of paper that the paper mill made. That was a Herculean effort, I tell you. That was just incredible. We made, thousands of different shades, colors, and sizes, and weights, and it was just enormously complex. I wouldn't call it a project because, I was really more I was just developing, grabbing information from him, doing a little bit of business analysis, understanding what he needs next, and then, putting that in, and it just grew and grew and grew and grew, and 14 months of development work. That was a purely internal position, so there was no project business at all, because we worked for ourselves. The business was to sell paper, obviously. And now let's fast forward to the end of the company. Okay, there are 2 things that happened that led to the shutdown of this company. I'd been long gone then, but there was a big turnover of the paper business in Europe at the time. Lots of consolidation, other paper mills going out of business and all that. And my former employer, they decided they wanted a piece of the cake. So they grew. They really expanded their business in Switzerland. And it was millions and millions and millions of infrastructure that they spent on. And there was one warehouse project where I don't know if they went with the lowest bidder, but it must have been something like that. And that warehouse, it was a measly 50 million or 25 million, something along those lines. So it was a sizable chunk, but in comparison to the other projects, that particular warehouse was nothing. So it did not get the appropriate oversight, the appropriate attention. It was just the smaller warehouse project where they were constructing this business. Turns out it was built so badly that you couldn't enter it. But it was a risk of falling down with, the screws just not being up to the quality that they needed. And so, the house, the warehouse literally crashed and the project literally crashed. But those few millions that they just wasted on that project caused the whole of the company to go down because they had invested so much money in that. And then, this tiny little thing crashes and it just took everything else down with it, like a house of cards. So interesting how that ended there. Let's see. After the paper mill, I went abroad. I went on a worldwide tour with a group called Up With People. That took me a year. I traveled around the world, performed a musical show, sang, performed on stage. I'd never done anything like that before. It was very interesting. And then I was in Brussels.
Did you sing?
Yeah, I did sing. I sang a solo in front of. Yeah. We went to Germany. We went to Germany, and because I was one of the people who spoke German in the group, so I was doing the MC and I was announcing all the acts and that, and it was a lot of fun. It was never done anything like that before. Don't play an instrument, never sang, but I just decided to join that group. It seemed like a lot of fun, and it was. And
cool.
The year went over and I went back, and in the meantime, one of my actually no, there was a stint in between. So I was in Brussels with the group, and I contacted somebody in Switzerland who I knew was looking for a software developer again, and he gave me a job in. He had taken over a department in a travel agency, the tour operator rather, and I went there, and for a year I worked there after I got back once again as a software developer. But I realized, because I had been abroad with this group of people, that I was lacking people. I was sitting in an office just hacking away and just programming. And I decided, okay, I need to bring people back into my life. Looked around what was available, and a colleague of mine from the paper mill, they hadn't gone out of business at that time yet, had just changed positions, and he was working for a management consulting firm in my hometown, and he agreed to hire me as a junior management consultant. And that then was my first position where I worked full-time on a project business. So management consulting, there were about 120 people working in the branch office where I was, and we helped medium and small-sized businesses as well as government agencies in all kinds of projects. And I would think those were kind of formative years for me, because I was able to look into so many different industries. When you are a consultant, you go into a business, you have to start understanding the business, you have to learn about it, and then you have to be able to help them and consult with them and help them with their goals. And it was very interesting. All kinds of things. For example, we did visualization of crime and accident data for the state's police, believe it or not. And yeah, so they had the data, but they had no means of making it visual for their annual report. So they came to us because we had one of the few software packages available that allowed you to visualize data at the time. Nowadays, you put it into your spreadsheet software, push a button, and there you go, you have a graphic. But that is now, that was then. And I also learned why there are fewer deaths per number of accident on the motorway than there are when you go onto normal streets. Because on normal streets, people drive like this and they will crash into each other, leading to more deaths than on the motorway where everybody is going in the same direction. So if you hit, the accidents are often fewer deaths on the motorway than regular roads. But yes. We also ran regular training courses there. And I was teaching a lot at the time. And I think also this is where my love for teaching started. So this is another, small step to where I am today. But every minute of every day on the job had to be accounted for. Like I said, this was project business. This was consulting. So you needed to, you could only make money if the customer would pay you. So when you were working, we had these pieces of paper similar to sticky notes, but they were cardboard, and you would write down project number, what you did, how many minutes, literally by the minute, and you would have this book full of these index cards, and every month these index cards would go to a central department and they would process them and add them up and create an invoice for the customer. And it was just an enormously time-consuming way of doing it. And it also led to an interesting culture in the company. Because you were expected to be about 85% of your time needed to be billable as a consultant. If you didn't work on a customer project, well, what are you working on? You're of no value if you don't bring any money in. And that meant that if you got up and you walked into the little cafeteria that we had there to grab yourself a cup of coffee, and there was somebody there, you would start chatting with them. But after about 2 minutes or so, people were starting to look at their watches. Literally. It's like, yeah, we've been talking for 2 minutes. These 2 minutes are now lost time. I can't bill anybody for it. So that was a rather negative thing to do. It came as negative to me, and I don't know. I still haven't figured out how, as a consultant in a bigger consulting firm, how you could make this, how this could be improved. Have you come across any solutions for that? Because to me, that is really the big negative thing from that job, the feeling of you're pressured, every minute counts, every minute is money, and if you don't bill it to a customer, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, I think the solution to that, maybe solution is the wrong word, but the improvement to that is for someone in a customer project, some say customer facing project. I think we have to look at the three big goals we have. And one of them is, of course, profitability, which is to a big degree based on making your time billable. By the way, the next thing is cash flow. And the third thing is the happy customers. So that you say, look, goods, profit, being billable, this is all very important. And having the bills in time, the invoices in time, because otherwise we start to finance our customer projects. But there is this other thing, and that's the happy customer. Maybe sometimes we need to spend time just to listen to them, to understand them, maybe to better make money from them in the end, because we understand them better, we know them better. If you never take time to listen to your customer, you will never know the customer and will never see the entry points for new business, for better business, to re-engineer the benefits that your do for the customer. So it's a matter of culture maybe, yeah, but it's also a matter of the approach you have here. What do you want?
And another good thing nowadays is with a focus on the customer and on exchanges that actually help you understand what's going on, understand what a customer needs. But even if you're talking to a colleague, you might get another perspective on an item or an issue that you're facing. And that'll actually end up with a much better productivity in terms of results and quality than if you had spent that time only focusing on what you are thinking about rather than what is good for the project.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was not the culture back there. You know, the 2 minutes you spent with your colleague where you learned something that improved the project for the no, that was wasted. And here's the thing. If you called somebody in the company on the phone and you asked them a question about your project and you spoke to them for 10 minutes, at the end of that phone call, they would say, oh, by the way, what is the number of that project you're working on so I can bill my time to it? Right? So it was very, very, you would think twice. Do I want to call this, you know, person who is so high up in the hierarchy of the company? Because, you know, the higher they are up in the hierarchy, the more they charge per hour. Right? How can I justify this phone call to my customer if they suddenly see, you know, the CEO of the company charges you half an hour at 300 Swiss francs? It's like, you gotta be kidding me. What? Yeah. So it led to this really interesting situation. So what happened next there is they realized that, you know, this whole time tracking, the way they were doing it was just time consuming and resources consuming. So somebody came up with the great idea, why don't we codify it? Why don't we develop a software? So they did. They started developing a software for this internally with the intent of actually selling it externally. And that took about 3/4 of a year until it was ready. And then I became sort of a junior project coordinator, product owner kind of combination, technical person on it. And I was helping our external customers implement this time tracking and resource tracking software in their businesses. So again, you know, purely project business oriented job where I would, you know, sales would sell it and then it would come to me and there would be a project that was agreed upon. Again, you know, every minute is billable and I would implement it at their offices. I would train them. I would teach them. We would have, you know, 5-10 customers coming in and we would show them how to use the software in a training room together. So it was the whole, you know, initial, the early software development days that we had there. Of course, that made the whole process of tracking your hours easier. But it also meant that, you know, you couldn't hide anything anymore, right? Because every line that anybody puts in is automatically added to the bill, you know, so for the customer, you know, a total transparency. And of course, now customers started to come in. Why is this? What is this? Why are 5 minutes there? What about here? So you really had a harder time, actually, defending things. And you know, looking back, it's just like it pains me to see how this type of approach was so there was friction always between the customer and us because of the billing, because of the hours, because of, you know, we needed to make a profit. And I think, and this is, I believe, where Oliver, where your book and the conversations that you have also come in, you look at project business as something, you know, is hand in hand, right? something that's collaborative. You have to work together with your customer. You can't just be on a friction path like we were back then. And how do we achieve this nowadays? How do we have a collaborative environment with our customers if, you know, it is a, you know, time and material kind of a situation? What approach do you take? Oh, my cat is showing up here.
First of all, you have to look at many things.
Yeah.
The first thing you have to look at is the attitudes of people. It begins with attitudes. Attitudes is the A in the ABC of whatever we do. Yeah. So the first question is, what is the attitude of people? And one thing that I consider very important is to select the right people. Selection of organizations you work with, people you work with, is also very, very important. You want to have people around who are, first of all, trustworthy. The biggest booster of projects and of speed and of velocity is trust. But trust needs trustworthy people. Otherwise, they will damage you. They will rip you off. So you need trustworthy people around you, and you need people who are capable of doing the things, and so on. So selecting people, selecting partners, I think, is number one. And it's a matter of attitudes. It's a matter of ethics, of course. And it's also a matter of can we expect an understanding between all of us. And the next thing is contracting. I think there is a cultural thing. There are cultures where a contract is more a description of a battlefield. There are other cultures, national cultures, where a contract is a description of a relationship. We build a relationship together. You're from Switzerland, I'm from Germany. That's countries where this relationship aspect is very much there, and it's there all the time. Good faith questions of good faith, and we want to do something together. There are other countries, mostly Anglo-American countries, where the contract is more understood as the description of a battlefield. You have some rules for a battle that you are now doing, and good faith doesn't play a big role. It's more the four corners of the contract that matter here. So I think that's something we have to look at. The national culture. What does the national business culture expect from us? And what does business law expect from us? If law is not supporting us to go together, then we need to develop agreements on top of what we have in the contract. The contract then is a minimum, describing a minimum. What do you need to deliver to not be in breach of contract? But what we want to do is to achieve something together. We call it here the mission. We want a mission success. So we have a joint understanding of the mission. That's the next big thing. Making time billable is, I think, important if you live on billed time. But then the next question is, how much do you get paid? If you have a partnership approach, and if everyone understands, everyone needs to live from what they do. So the contractor organization also lives from what they work. And if you understand, if you want good people to work for you, you have to pay them right. Then they don't have to look at every minute, whether it's billed or not. They know in total it's enough for them to survive, and now they can focus on the joint mission. So I think having a mission understanding, a joint mission understanding, cross-corporate, that's the difficult thing with all those corporations with different business interests. That's the next big thing, which means you need to understand what the mission is. You have to find a mission statement. I remember I was in a company and we discussed this 2 years ago or so. We had a almost 2 days long workshop and came out with four words, with a mission statement of 4 words, just very brief and very short. But now they understood what all the organizations involved had to achieve there together. And I met someone of the project just last week, and I was told how much this really changed in the organization, that it was not so much the details, the minutes that were billed or not billed, also. It was all focusing on the big mission. And if someone runs into difficulties, if a contractor is spending more money in the project than what they earn, then they sit together and talk about that, because it's not the customer's interest to see a contractor going bankrupt. So they talk about it and they find solutions. And the big thing is mission success. If the solution supports mission success, then it's a good solution, even if for the moment it may be more expensive than what was expected. Get away from these little bits and pieces, these minutes that need to be billable. I think that's not a good approach. Simply accept everyone has business interests, and they are valid interests, and they are legitimate interests. And then let's do the project together and follow a mission together in this field where we accept that everyone has his legitimate interests.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see how a mission in a situation like that would be extremely helpful if you're all pulling on the same, in the same direction, and you know exactly this is where we're heading. No, we definitely didn't have anything like that. The projects that I was personally working on, I'm not sure a mission would have helped there. Because it was usually, install this software, teach how to do this, help with this problem in a area of logistics that they're having, and help them get over it. And they were usually, short-term consulting efforts that were not, so this is not on the level of a McKinsey where you go in and you have, this is 10 million euro kind of a situation. This is a, 5 to 10,000 kind of a situation where you deal with a small business, a medium-sized business, and all they want results, and they want them now, right? And they don't necessarily feel that this talking about strategy and mission is helpful for, well, just for that thing. No, just do it, kind of an approach. I get where they're coming from, because it helps to keep the cost low, but if you don't agree ahead of time on what it is that you're actually consulting on, what that mini project is going to really have to deliver, well, what do you expect to come out at the end? So I don't know if my former employer, they're still around. There are still people working for them today that were there when I was with them. So it's a good employer, and they have survived for a long time. I do not know how they are handling things today. I can only talk about the past, but it didn't really occur to me that this kind of billing culture was actually something that affected me on a very personal level. I had to leave there and then look back and realize, oh my God, I have become the minute counter, the bean counter really there. So I am the bookkeeper. Every single minute is important, and I have to track it. And I noticed that with my next job, Switzerland is basically ruled by two supermarkets. There's Migros and there's Coop. And I was working for Coop Switzerland in Basel, which is where Germany, France, and Switzerland meet. And that was a purely internal job. I was working there in sort of a logistics department. We were in charge of the barcodes and had a few logistics projects there as well. And I remember quite vividly. So we were taking a break, getting up from work, everybody, the whole team, 7 or 8 people, and we would walk to the cafeteria. And it was a big cafeteria. I mean, on the top floor of the building, and we would get something to drink. We'd sit down and we would chat. And after about 2 or 3 minutes, it's coming, right? I started looking at my watch. It's like, I've got to go back to work. Right? Because that was the culture I had come from. So I got up and I went back to work, and everybody else kept they were just sitting there. They continued chatting. And I'm like, what's wrong with me, or what's wrong with them? And that's, it took a few times for me to realize that I'm always the one to get up? Why am I getting up? And I realized that this was the culture I had brought with me from my previous employer. You don't sit down, you don't enjoy the company of your colleagues, you have no time for, you know, social interaction between them. And I literally had to reteach myself to just, yeah, whatever. I'm gonna sit here for another 5-10 minutes and enjoy the conversation. And we did, like you suggested, Martin. You know, there is a conversation going on, and it will help you in your day-to-day work. So even though it was on a social engagement and doing the cafeteria, you still talk business and you solve problems together in that way, right? So yes, did mostly these logistics projects, and that was also the time when I became much more aware of methodologies, project management methodologies and approaches. And it was the first time that I read the PMBOK guide. The internet had just started up, and we needed a methodology, and I started looking around, and I found this document, and it must have been the version 1 or version 2, first or second edition of the PMBOK guide that I saw and read, and I was like, wow, this is amazing, this is really good. And yeah, so that was really when I got into the various relationships there. The methodologies there. Sorry, I got a bit confused because some people are.
Sorry, that's me. That's me. That's my mistake. Sorry.
Folks are popping up on the screen.
Yes,
here.
sorry for that. Sorry for that. They're gone.
Yes. Our team that I was working with, we then kind of morphed into sort of the corporate PMO. We wasn't called that, but it in hindsight it was the PMO. The CEO of the company decided it was important for everybody, literally everybody, to understand project management. Because he realized that, you know, yeah, they are huge projects that were running. They were in the process of implementing SAP, and that was a humongous project with resources left, right, and center being spent on that. But there are also the smaller projects in each of the departments. And if those projects aren't managed well, you know, it will just, you won't hear about it, but it's lost time, lost value, lost effort. So if everybody knows a little bit about how to manage a project, even if it's just a small, tiny little project, if we teach them well, the overall mini projects will help the company grow as well. So we started that training effort with the help of an external consultant. And that was when I helped develop my first one-page methodology, literally 1 page. The whole project management methodology that we were training people on fit onto 1 piece of paper. Is it front and back, or was it just the front? Not sure anymore. So it was 1 sheet of paper anyway. So one page of methodology. And to me, you know, even that was kind of a revelation that you could put, you know, those complex processes that I had seen in the PMBOK guide, and you could figure out a way of getting this boiled down to the essentials and still make it so that, yeah, you can follow this, and at the end you will come out with a successful small little project that you have. And we taught several hundred people several hundred people in the company, and helped them to learn about project management. It was also at the time when I met my wife. She's a US citizen. We decided that at one point we'd probably like to move abroad and live somewhere else, and decided, well, the United States would be the easiest way to get to. And I decided, okay, I'm going to change jobs and I'm going to find a new position with a company that has branch offices in the United States, so I could hopefully move there at one point, which happened eventually. And I moved once again into a project business focused position. So the Co-op Switzerland, the supermarket, that was purely internal. We were just doing internal projects. There was no external billing. And then I moved over into an internet startup company, and we built websites. We built websites for external customers, and that was done on a proprietary development platform. So we would design the internet, the website that you needed, intranet, extranet, whatever it is that you wanted, and we would develop that with in-house resources on our own platform. But nowadays, companies that are of the size that we supported, you would probably use Joomla or WordPress or something like that to quickly ramp up a website for yourself. But back then there was nothing there. So we built them from scratch. There was a custom environment that we had. I think I was very successful at that job as a project manager there, because I was literally given free reign as a project manager. You were the king and the queen of the projects that you managed for your customers, and I think this is where your earlier comment comes back in, Oliver. The cooperation, the relationship with the customer. It was a waterfall-based approach, interesting enough. And nowadays, I would not do this. I would definitely use Agile. So first, we developed a really detailed requirements specification document. I mean, some of these were 150 pages long. Right, of every single page of the website would be described, and every field would be described, and what happens if you click and do and that, and it was just wow. And then it would be agreed upon, it would be estimated, and so you had a fixed price project that you would be doing, and then you would go back and he would start developing, and the customer wouldn't know anything that was going on, right? And weeks of development and in-house and nothing, no communication to the customer. Obviously, what are you going to tell them, right? Yeah, they're still working on it. And then at some point you would show something to the customer, and that's when you needed to brace yourself, because, oh, can you change this and can you change that? So it was really, the traditional waterfall-based approach where once the customer sees what you developed, they finally know what they actually wanted, right? Definitely today, something like that, you would have to build it agile. You would not do this 150-page document. You would probably do some sort of a rolling wave planning and have start with a few wireframes and build from that out. But
Absolutely.
it's just, yeah, you could do that back then. And so there was not this minute by minute charging of the time that you spent. The friction came at the moment when you showed the customer what you had done, when they realized, well, that's not what I wanted, right? And that's when the friction started.
And when they don't want to pay for the changes that you
they don't want to pay. Well, that's
now.
not what I meant. Well, that's what we documented here. That's not how I understood it.
Yeah, and it's all paid. Now you have to rewrite 50% of the code, and that's of course all in the fixed price.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not going to pay for that, right? Yeah. And I think this is also the critique that I have for myself and the management of the company itself. Nobody kept track of profitability, right? This company, it was one of the most talked about IPOs of the very early 2000s of Switzerland. I mean, they went on to the Swiss stock exchange, and the amount of money that flowed in was just mind-blowing, right? It was the largest IPO of an internet company, a tech-based company in Switzerland at the time. And there was a big focus on growth. Reporting of new customers, new projects, and all of that, quarter by quarter by quarter. But nobody kept track of, are we actually making any money? Right? My dad asked me, should I invest in the company? And I said, we have a good product, right? But I think the price of the stock is probably a bit too high. He didn't listen. He still bought a few and lost some money there, right? Yeah. It was at the time it seemed like the archetypical at the time internet company. Let's build something, let's grow it, and then let's sell it with a profit to somebody else and let them deal with the fallout there. One of the projects that I had was in Munich, where the two of you are from.
Really? Yep.
And that's how I fell in love with Munich. Project was about
easy.
a year.
That's easy. That's very easy.
So my home in Europe is Solothurn. That's my hometown in Switzerland. No question about it. It's a beautiful Baroque little town. It's just gorgeous. You can walk from one end to the other within 5 minutes. And I'm not exaggerating or under exaggerating. It's that small. My second home is London in England, because my brother and his family live there. So I spent a lot of time there. I know London quite well. But Munich, I was there 5-6 times over the course of that year. It's absolutely gorgeous. In autumn, when you can sit out in the beer garden and suddenly one of the chestnuts falls into your beer and it splashes all over. It's just, and it's a warm summer evening and the sun is setting and you overlook the gardens. It's just, oh my God. Yeah. So by the way, that was one of the towns that Sean and I wanted to move to when we were thinking about, moving away from Switzerland. So instead of moving to here, we're thinking, should we move to Munich? It's so gorgeous there. But yeah, that didn't happen. Yeah. So yes, spoke to the guys at the company there and said, hey, would you be interested if I went to the United States? And I took all the knowledge that I have from building and using our software here in Europe, and I went to the United States and joined the project management team there and bring in, the knowledge. And they fell for it. I mean, no, they said yes. And they moved me to the United States, to California, Orange County. And then I got laid off within 3 months. It was like, are you crazy? You just paid to move me from Switzerland to the United States, and within 3 months you lay me off. I'm the only person who really has experience in using this product, and you just go, bye-bye, we don't need you anymore. It was like flabbergasted. It was completely unexpected. Ha! What a cliffhanger, right? That's it for part 1 of my interview with the Project Business Foundation. Part 2 will be coming your way shortly. Until next time.